You guys ready?
Ready.
All right. We're going to call to order the Charter Review Committee for March 4th, 2026. We're going to excuse Mr. Rod Harden and Val Hoxie. Ms. Smith, couple changes or a couple things that I wanted to talk about on the agenda tonight. Would it be okay if I move some things around on here? Is the committee okay with that? The reason I would like to kind of move the minutes up to the front, if that's okay with everybody, so that way we can approve them and then get on with the business of tonight.
Sure, that'd be fine.
First of all, it's great to see like a semi-full audience tonight. So great that there's some willingness to participate in the conversation. We've had 6 of these meetings now, and you know, having an audience that's full and is interested is important. So I'm glad you guys turned out this evening as well. So these are the minutes, right, Lily? Okay. Did we have any changes that we needed to make to the committee minutes?
No.
No? Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes from February 3rd? Been moved and seconded to approve the minutes as presented. All those in favor say aye. Motion passes unanimously. So as far as order of business tonight, Mr. Smith, you're going to walk through the changes, go through the charter completely and the changes that the committee is recommending.
Correct.
And then we'll open it up for public comment.
Yes.
And then at the end, does the committee vote to approve or recommend a recommendation to the council?
Yeah, if they're at the point they're ready to do that, this would be a great time. If they have something that they want to bring back for what, something comes up, we're also not under a real tight time crunch if they wanted to take another meeting to discuss something else.
Perfect. All right. Any questions from the committee?
No.
Nope. All right, Ms. Smith, take it over here.
We're ready?
Yes, sir.
All right. So I just have a couple of items. So at the last minute, we decided to stream this so we could keep a recording of this session. So just so everybody knows, and we did not necessarily get it out as quickly as far in advance as we had hoped because it was a last minute decision, but it is going to be available on our YouTube channel after the meeting. And then also just a warning to some of our audience members, this is not a city council meeting. And so there's a lot of them out there. So let's remember not to talk business since you're all gathered here today.
So we do have a quorum of city councilors here. So yes, no discussions.
And Rich is starting to twitch over here. So, all right. So this process has been going on for a little while, but I'm going to kind of just go through a little bit of history, where the committee started, and kind of the process, why we're even looking at the charter. Then we're going to talk about some possible or the changes that the committee has looked at. Then we'll open up for comment and then potentially a recommendation to the city council. So we started in 2025. The first meeting was in October. We've had 4 meetings. This is 5th. And the resolution, this resolution 2382, is what kind of set the process and put the structure around it. So it directed the committee to get their review done within 6 to 9 months. They also were required to have a publicly advertised public hearing, which is what we're doing tonight. And there were 7 members of the committee appointed with that resolution, and then the staff was directed to support them and provide any information that they were looking for. City council had a liaison, that is Mayor Primer, and then a potential recommendation to the council, and then ultimately any changes that they would recommend would need to be put in front of the voters, because that's how our charter is ultimately changed. So they also were directed to review the entire charter. So we went through every sentence, every paragraph, took a look at it. There were some specific sections in the resolution related to geographic representation, ward boundaries, elected versus appointed judge, a number of other things that we'll hit on tonight, a number of those. The committee, here they are, their names, they're in front of, most of them are in front of you tonight. So what is a city charter? Why are we talking about it? And what makes it important? So a city charter is really the constitution for the city. And just like for our constitution, if any, as far as the country goes, any changes and the state's similar, that has to be approved by the voters. And within the Constitution, it really outlines, puts together our form of government, how we have elections, and a number of other things. The same thing's true of our charter. It lays out how the city government of Hermiston operates. And again, the voters are the final decision maker on that document. So the history of our charter, it was originally adopted in 1910. And then it's been modified a number of times over the time period. The current charter language that we looked at was adopted in 2015 after the City Council did a really comprehensive review and took a look at a lot of different changes. And so that's what we're looking at now, a document that's about 10 years old. So why should we review the charter? There's a lot of changes that happen in state law. Some of those are dictated by courts, different things. So just making sure that our charter doesn't violate any state law or federal law. And then our operations continue to get more and more complex. So making sure we're current and dealing with the issues that have come before the city. And then taking a look, making sure that we're okay with how the representation of the city is. What structure of government do we have? Is there enough accountability within the charter to help make sure that that the government's doing the things that the citizens want? And then sometimes there's poor performance. So an example that I would give is, I think the business community in the city of Portland had a lot of concerns with the structure of their charter. And so they just went through a big change and changed the structure of their government in an effort to try to perform better, to do some things that at least the leaders in the community wanted to change. And so that could be another reason to take a look at it. And then just it's a good standard practice to make sure for all those other reasons that we have it looked at. So the reason the council in 2025 adopted this as a goal that we would review the charter. It had been 10 years. And the other thing we said at the beginning is review doesn't equal change. The committee could look at it and say, yeah, we don't think there's anything that needs to be changed. We've reviewed it, and that's all that we needed to do. The committee does have some recommended changes. We're kind of putting them in 4 separate buckets: elections, elected official roles, the city manager role, and then charter maintenance. So the first one, the city has 8 city councilors. 4 of them are elected at large, and 4 of them are elected from wards. The current ward boundaries are spelled out in the city charter, and they were there way before 2015, and the city has changed a lot since then. So we take a look at the current boundaries. You see Ward 1 is in the upper left, and that has about 4,200. And you go down to Ward 2 in the bottom left, 7,400 population. So those are the biggest disparities in the populations of those. And so that really brings forward concerns that are each ward getting equal representation? If somebody lives in each ward, are they getting equal representation? And the argument would be no, they're not at this point. So that was a concern. That was one of the issues that we talked a lot about. And so what is proposed in the draft charter is to make the drawing, the drawing of the boundaries something that the city council needs to do on a 10-year basis after every census, which is a common practice in the state and the federal government. We redraw our district boundaries, and it takes the actual charter boundaries out of the charter. So they can establish an ordinance that doesn't have to then go through an election process. It can be established, and it still would have the same, from a citizen standpoint, the same protection of referendum or initiative. If they didn't like what the council put forward, the residents could question that and put it forward with some signatures to go on the ballot if that was in their will. So that's one of the big things from an election standpoint that the proposed changes do, is to propose redrawing the boundaries to get them on a more equal basis, and then moving forward, that the council would set those boundaries without having to go to an election every time to reset the boundaries. The second one also has to do kind of with the same idea of the ward. So currently, the at-large councilors are all elected from voters at large, but the ward councilors are also elected by everybody in the city. They only have to live within the boundaries of the wards. So again, from a concern of, the reason to establish wards is to make sure that all parts of the city are represented in the discussions and the work of the city council. And so it could still be diluted by the fact that all of the city electors vote for those people rather than just the ones that live in the ward. And there's been some challenges to that in the region, in the Tri-Cities area recently. And so what the committee is recommending is that those be changed, that the language in the charter make it so that the ward councilors would only be elected by the people who live in those wards. And that would not happen. So it kind of happens at a weird time in our process. We're in the process of ward councilor elections right now. All of that is still going to take place with the same current rules. If the voters change it at some point, then it would go on to the next ballot to be changed after the boundaries are redrawn. So elected official roles. So currently, the city of Hermiston is one of 5 cities within the state who has an elected municipal court judge. And after the discussions with the committee, they're recommending that we change to an appointed municipal court judge. One of the biggest, I think, and they can speak for themselves, but one of, I think, the biggest kind of tipping points was the fact that we're really limiting our pool of potential municipal court judge candidates by having it restricted to somebody getting elected from within the city. Even in just my 10 years here, the number of attorneys that practice and live in the city has gone down drastically. And so we've really limited that pool of potential candidates to be the judge. So what this would do is would have a process that the council and the city manager work together to appoint the municipal court judge, and it would still continue to have the requirement to be an attorney and those kind of things, but this would allow someone who might not live in the city limits to be that judge and give us a broader pool. We could go out for it wouldn't be exactly like a hiring process. It would be more under contract, but it would be under an RFP or something like that. Again, that would be left up to the council and the city manager to come up with that process. The other change in this area is currently every 2 years we have elections. So at the end of those elections, the council gets together and vote on a city council president. So that's the person who sits in for the mayor if the mayor's not available, or goes to a meeting or whatever in behalf of the city if the mayor's not available. And so rather than do that every 2 years, they're proposing that happens every year. And the reasoning is giving more people the opportunity to potentially have some leadership opportunities on the council and giving them maybe building that bench, so to speak, for a potential future mayor or something like that. Then on the city manager role side, right now, the city manager is required to live in the city limits under the charter. And I just shared that some of my observations of what's happening in other cities and even my own experience coming here, that it can be difficult sometimes to find a place to live within the city for somebody coming from outside. And so this is a change that would allow 12 months for the city manager to find a place to live in the city. They could then live outside of the city for that initial 12 months if that was a challenge. Then there's currently, it's a little unclear. The city council appoints the city attorney. There's no real discussion of who supervises that position on a day-to-day basis. This puts some language in there that says the city manager supervises the day-to-day activities, but it still is the city council that ultimately makes the hire and fire decision. And then the last area is, again, requiring a review of the charter at least once every 10 years. So if the council or the city felt like it needed to happen more frequently, it could, but at least once every 10 years. And then there are a number of kind of minor language changes to bring our charter in line with the League of Oregon Cities model charter, which there are provisions in there that have been kind of used and tested in some other cities that attempt to make sure that the city preserves as much of its authority as it can, especially in relationship to the way court decisions have been made and different things like that. So that's a summary of the proposed changes, and be happy to hear comments, feedback, and we can try to answer questions. The committee can answer kind of their thinking, and if I or the city attorney can offer any, we would be happy to do that.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Yeah, a lot of deliberate conversation about the formation of the current charter, and not any huge challenges or problems, but the fact that we were representing wards, we had a lot of conversation about. There was some back and forth about whether they were elected by the whole of the city versus the individual constituents within those wards. We spent a lot of time on that, and I think the consensus was that we would elect within those wards. And a lot of conversations about not necessarily gerrymandering districts to how we wanted that to be, but to give equal representation, because those hadn't been adjusted in close to 40 years, if I was correct. And so the city has evolved as far as population goes over the course of the last 40 years as well. And so certain sections of the city have grown faster, and those folks are maybe overrepresented in those districts. And so having equal representation across all of the wards just made sense to us. And also taking it outside of the charter structure so that the council has a little bit of flexibility in that, because censuses happen, on the 10-year. This is happening on the 5-year. We would have had to wait another 15 years or so to readjust those again. And so it just made sense that the council could adjust those within the 10-year review period. So spent a lot of time talking about that, as well as the challenges that the city of Hermiston and a lot of smaller rural communities are having with finding good quality attorneys and judges, and being able to broaden our pool, and also having some kind of management oversight of that department as well. As an elected official, that person is an individual, and they can choose to do whatever they want in that elected position. And so this provided the city some more flexibility in how the court is managed within the municipal format. So spent a lot of time about that, talking back and forth and the pros and cons of that. We actually had municipal court judge come and speak about his opinion and thoughts about it as well, and he also supported that recommendation too. How about other committee comments or thoughts? Any other members want to speak about the process or the changes that we made?
I think you summed it up pretty well, actually.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of really good conversations and discussions about, how the different components of this kind of intertwine. And I feel like, oh, sorry, a lot of really good
Yeah.
conversations. A lot of really good conversations and just a lot of really good discussions about just how the different inner workings of the city charter intertwines with each other and all these different components working together. And I just feel like this was a much needed and really great update of the charter.
Yeah, very good.
I just have one.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to make clear is that with the boundaries, it's all nonpartisan. We don't look at population affiliations at all. It's based strictly on population base.
Yeah, very good.
Make a comment to you.
Yeah.
I just felt that the process was very thorough. You know, we were provided all the information up front, had references, had subject matter experts come in that we were able to speak with and help to guide our discussions. So thought it was very thorough from start to finish, and we were very well informed throughout the entire process to come to the recommendations that we're making.
Yeah, very good. You know, the League of Oregon Cities spends a significant amount of time, putting together a model charter, and we use that as kind of a framework. And there were some language issues that we were able to update throughout this process with the guidance of that charter too. So overall, I think I know I won't speak for the committee, but I'm happy with the process and where we're at and the recommendation we're making moving forward.
I agree,
Yes.
I'd also just like to shout out a big thank you to the city of Hermiston for facilitating this committee, being able to come together and make this update. Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna, Mr. Mayor, did you want to say anything? You got to observe the whole process.
Yeah.
We didn't let him vote, just for your information.
They let me throw my 2 cents worth in here and there. Every once in a while, I throw a nickel in just to be safe. But no, the process was well thought out. It was well run. I have to give kudos to Dr. Drotzman for his leadership in this. He did a really good job of keeping everybody on task and, herding the cats, as it were. And so, but I think the finished product, or the nearly finished product, is something that as a city we can work with. And when it comes down to it, this is going to come before the city council. The city council may see a couple of things that they think that they need to change as well prior to sending it to the voters. But it's a great process, and I am very proud of everybody that was involved with it.
Yeah. Well, and, compliments to the council too for their leadership and making the recommendation that we do review this on a regular basis and bringing it back forward for the community to review and have input. So bringing outside members in to have that conversation in the committee format to review that and then make a recommendation to the council. It's a great process. So. Okay, let's open it up to public comment. We'll start with people in person public comment, and then maybe some written public comment that I think we've received as well. Okay, who wants to go first? Please come up to the microphone, introduce yourself by name and address, and tell us what you think.
Jackie Linton, and I live in Hermiston.
All right, Jackie.
First, I want to start off by thanking each and every one of you for volunteering your time to go through the charter and for the work that you've done. It seems like you had to do a lot, and I commend you on that. What I would like to say is that I would like to see the judge continue to be voted in by the people, for the simple fact I think that will help the citizens of Hermiston kind of be involved. Maybe it'll encourage even more people to come out, and maybe someday we'll have a full house all the time during the council meetings. So, so that part of it, and one of my questions is when you hire, I think it was to hire the city attorney, and it would be the mayor, I mean, not the mayor, the city manager, and all of the city council will be involved in that, or just certain people would be picked?
Well, I mean, the council and the manager could come up with a process.
Okay.
That doesn't get dictated, but there is a group effort, and ultimately, the whole council votes to appoint the city attorney.
Okay, thank you. That's all I wanted. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Others? Had nothing better to do on a Wednesday night but hang out and watch us do this, huh? All right, come on up.
Go first.
Second's easier, right?
Second's easier. My name's Krista Van Veen. I live at 764 West Alder Avenue. Like Jackie, I also want to say thank you. I recognize that this is a lot of work and it's not very exciting unless you're really into it. So thank you so much for it. I think a lot of these are very well thought out. I just have a couple questions that I'm very interested in. Excuse me. About the redistricting. As the city reviews the potential ward boundaries, what criteria are being used to ensure that neighborhoods with shared interests remain together and that ward boundaries follow logical geographic features rather than dividing communities? And then the second question that I have is about the voting. If ward councilors are elected only by voters within their ward, how will the city council ensure that decisions about citywide issues like infrastructure, budgets, long-term planning, how they continue to prioritize the needs of the entire community rather than individual wards? And the simplest example I can come up for that is, what if there's a decision to be made about putting a park somewhere? And if I'm representing Ward 1, but the park's going to go in Ward 3, am I going to vote for that because it doesn't affect the people that are in my ward? And how do we avoid that? Thank you.
Great questions. Both of which the committee discussed with some length. It's my understanding that the council will establish some sort of rule or regulation around where the boundaries are placed. And we did have some conversations about breaking up neighborhoods. You're gonna have some sort of boundary at some point, and neighbors across the street will probably be separated that maybe were part of a ward before, the same ward. And so there will be some initial separation. But I think the intent was to try and keep it as close to the current design as possible. And so we looked at some different maps that were
Just example.
reallocation as an example. And most of them reflected our current format with an adjustment for people. But ultimately, that'll be based on population, but ultimately, that'll be up to the council to decide. Am I
Yeah, can I
describing that
just
correctly?
share
Yeah.
some of the language that's
Yep.
proposed? So first it says, the city shall be divided into 4 wards of approximately equal population. And so then it goes, when the boundaries of the wards are redefined, each ward shall have one continuous boundary, so it's not setting up little islands. And ward boundaries shall conform to the principles of neighborhood groupings, compactness of area, and regularity of boundaries insofar as can reasonably be attained. So the council, in adopting an ordinance that would govern this process, could put more language to be more specific about that, but I think that language, I think the idea was not to be too specific, but to still say, hey, it should still be under these kind of guidelines. And so that's the language that's in the charter.
And then I think her second question had to do about voting. You have 8 counselors that vote on any action that happens up here, so no one ward can overweigh the action of the whole council. And historically, in my observation, the counselors have all done just what was in the best interest of the community. That's been my observation. Could you get a counselor up here that only votes for their ward and their ward-specific things? Yeah, but there's still just one vote.
And I would just add that, a number of cities have this kind of a representation, and sometimes you do see that kind of, I'm only going to protect my ward, but I think a lot of that is a building of a culture and a kind of a teamwork philosophy, and I feel like that's something that we could continue to do whether we made that particular change or not.
Okay, other comments? Thank you for your questions. Other comments, questions? Yes, sir.
Nate Rivera, 383 Northwest Crestview Court. Dr. Drutzman, committee, I appreciate all the time and effort that's gone into this. A question of clarification is based on the recommendation and what council does. All of these will be a single decision where we won't have the ability to determine individual issues. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the
One
council
ballot, well,
could decide to
could
split
decide, yeah.
that. I mean, they could take this recommendation if it was all one and then say, well, we want to split out a certain issue. But that would be, the council would have to decide that.
Which is what
Sounded
happened on the
like-
last council, on the last charter review, because that's where we did the carve out, I think, with the judge.
Mhm.
You know, there was a basically two issues on the charter and the charter vote, as opposed to, just the charter as a whole.
Okay, thank you. And then my second comment is related to previous comments tonight related to the judge. I think it's important for the city to have accountability of the judge and for the judge to be elected by the citizens of our community. I think that's an important part of a judge's role in a community. So I would ask you to consider considering that option of keeping the judge locally elected. Thank you, and I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Nate. Others? Okay, yes. Yeah, you got another question?
Want me to restate my name?
No.
Okay. This is in regard to the ward voting.
Okay.
If ward councilors are elected only by voters, excuse me, in their ward, will residents begin expecting them to handle more neighborhood issues? And has the city considered whether that will increase the workload for those councilors?
Good question. You know, the city has had conversations about this in the past as far as like neighborhood groups and neighborhood associations. I know when I was on the council, that was always brought in front of the council on a regular basis. Um, I don't know that the council wants to get into the policy of telling communities or certain parts of neighborhoods how they should live, you know? But however a counselor communicates with their constituent, I guess will be up to them. And it does give maybe a more personalized ability if you know your neighbor and they're the counselor, and so you have somebody that you can connect with and talk to about issues with the city. So maybe it gives the opportunity for people to be closer to the representative. So, yeah, Mr.
So
Mayor.
with the deal with the ward based council, having, one person that's in that ward, that, your Ward 1, Ward 2, Ward 3, Ward 4, that the ward representative, that person, for all intents and purposes, could be the person that brings your issue to the council during his her time up here. And then you also have 4 at large. So, basically, for all intents and purposes, you have 5 people representing each ward at any given time. But I don't see there being a difference in the way that the wards would be represented on a day-to-day basis if they're elected strictly by the ward. The only way that would, where that would come into play is if, for all intents and purposes, they're not doing their job. And then those ward those ward members would be the ones to say, we don't think you're doing a good job and this is what we're going to do. And so, does that answer your?
It does. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Something else that comes to mind, though, is Hermiston historically has not had a large voting population. And I wonder if there's any consideration to that when drawing these new districts, if that is passed. Because what if you are a ward counselor, you're running for election in the newly drawn areas where there just aren't that many people that vote. I mean, I believe I heard that there, in the last election, there were between 13 and 1,500 people that voted.
Yeah, I don't think we can draw awards based on voting numbers. You know, it's got to be based on population numbers.
Right.
I think to your point, we don't turn out very well. I think 12% of our population voted last time, which is unfortunate. The other benefit to having a ward and a ward-specific election is it does decrease the costs of running a campaign. You now have 4,000 or 5,000 people that you're trying to reach out to, and you only have to put signs up in your ward versus the whole community. So it may make an opportunity for somebody that maybe is concerned about costs to increase their ability to run for a council position. The other thing is too is it's real easy for certain communities to elect people from a certain area of town based on popularity, based on their influence in the city, based on their economic advantages. And so you could get all the councilors elected from the Southeast Ward. And so this forces the community to get people from those different segments of to make sure that all areas of the community are represented. I like the structure. I think it works well and it's functioned well within Hermiston. And so that's why I continue to support this.
Because part of the discussion that took place, like the second, I think it was the first or second week, was the possibility of just going to all at large as opposed to, you know, the different wards. And the discussion, you know, it was a lively discussion. And the thought is based on the fact that, you know, you live here and, you know, this affects your neighborhood, your area, as opposed to, as Dr. Drotzman said, you know, you have everybody is elected from, you know, townhouse apartments. You know, they all get, you know, you get everybody in there gets elected as opposed, you know, and then how does the rest of the city get represented? And so by making sure that we have that part of it done, it makes, you know, you have a higher representation, you know, per living area.
And one of the reasons we brought this particular item forward from a staff standpoint is other cities have been challenged on Voting Rights Act concerns from the Department of Justice under the exact kind of structure that we currently have. And so because there's some cities that are pretty close to us that have had that, we felt like we ought to be concerned about making sure we stay outside it. So this is the one way. The other way would be what Mayor Primer just said, and that is go to all at large, or you vote for them within the wards. So that's why we brought it forward.
Is this on?
Yep.
It is, okay. My name is Lily. I live inside Hermiston. I'm glad I waited for a bit because a lot of the questions have been asked. So thank you. A lot of the same questions I had. And you guys kind of started to touch on this. But yeah, I was kind of just wondering, and I think it'd be good for anyone listening. And I do appreciate that this is recorded and just curious about it. You guys got professional folks to come in and speak with you. So if they went through the pros and cons of sticking to all at large or some wards, some at large, or even going to all wards, I don't know if that was part of the discussion, but I am curious what the professionals kind of brought to you. You've kind of touched on that. So if there's any more information or elaborate more, yeah, I'd be curious on that. And I was trying to look through this, and I don't know if I missed it, but if the judge is appointed, I don't know if I heard or read anywhere, would that judge need to reside inside Hermiston city limits?
There's not a requirement for that.
Okay.
Because that's one of the concerns that we're trying to address.
Right, and that's
appointed
what I've heard is that there's
back.
limited, yeah. And so if it's not specific to Hermiston city limits, I'd wonder if, I guess ultimately the councils that votes on this, but at least making it hopefully even something to resides inside Umatilla County, something more specific, because then that person does live in somewhat part of the community that they work for. I will say that too, that I pros and cons to everything, but yeah, whenever there is an election for any elected position, I think you have more of a voice from the community. So I think that's something big to consider in moving forward as far as an elected judge or an appointed judge. So thank you.
Thank you, Lily. We spent a lot of time talking about the wards and the at-large positions. You know, I think one of the unique things about each city's charter is it's local. It's that uniqueness to that individual city. And this charter has kind of determined who Hermiston is and has been. And so to go in and break it all down to at-large would be a wholesale large change to the charter. And so in trying to keep with history and what's worked or what we felt like worked well, I think the committee felt comfortable with keeping it with 4 ward and 4 at-large positions, with just the modifications to rebalance population so that we're getting equal representation. I don't know if we had anybody professionally speak to us about that design.
I mean, we didn't have any election experts.
Right.
I mean, we did a lot of research, reading about it, trying to find out, but we didn't bring in anybody who was specifically an election expert.
Others? Thanks for questions, Lil. Going once? All right. So we're going to move on to comments, written comments. Did we answer all of those? Did the committee get a chance? Should we read them?
That's not been our practice.
Okay.
I mean, at least in council meetings, to not read them directly, but I think we've addressed most of the concerns. We got some concerns. They were really more along the lines of kind of concerns about gerrymandering on a partisan basis, which doesn't really enter so much into our discussion. Also some concerns, maybe a lack of understanding about how the city manager, council manager form of government works, and thinking that we were going to have the city manager not be from here kind of thing because of the 12 months. And that really doesn't, the comment doesn't really address that. I think those are the major concerns
There's a
that
question
that
about
we got in.
president being 2 year versus 1 year,
Yeah.
and the mayor being 2 year versus,
Right.
yeah. So, yeah, just not I think, an understanding of.
Not of the overall picture of our form of government.
Yeah, and there was just one,
Yes.
right? One written comment. Okay.
And that will be reflected in the minutes when
Okay.
they're
Perfect.
out for this meeting.
All right. So, committee, what are your thoughts? You got any further actions, decisions, comfortable with where we're at?
Oh, go ahead. All right, we'll start on this side.
Okay, Paul, you got your
yeah.
microphone on?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, as I said earlier, I think the process was very thorough. We've been very well informed and advised throughout the entire process. And I, for one, am happy with moving forward with the recommendations as they're in this draft right here.
Okay, thanks, Paul.
Mhm.
Did you want to say anything, Monique?
No, I just appreciate everybody's time in this. We did have some good discussions with each other. I would feel comfortable moving this forward to the city council.
Thank you. Kendra?
I do definitely feel like I really like breaking apart the wards into keeping them in their distinct wards and having them voted for on individually works better than just making them all, citywide. I feel like there's a really important level of representation there, and not just that, it also really could energize some people to be a lot more involved, not just like with their local city council member that lives in their ward, but maybe more likely to run for city council or to be interested if they know it's not going to be a citywide thing. It's not going to be as expensive. It's not going to be as elaborate. It's just getting my neighbors together. And I feel like there's a lot of value to that. And so I think that works really well. I just wanted to put that two cents out
Yeah,
there. And I really enjoyed being part of this process and being involved in this. And I look forward to sitting on committees in the future.
Karen, did you want to say something?
Yes.
Okay.
I was really excited about the prospect of having the individual ward counselors elected within their own ward, because I've worked on a lot of different campaigns, and I'm really looking forward to getting to know the people who are running in my own ward better, finding out what their issues are, what their concerns are. And I'm really excited about that. And I'm like Kendra, I think it's really potentially could really energize the process. I come to a lot of city council meetings, and sometimes, quite frankly, I'm the only member of the public that's here. And I would like to see the whole room full at every single meeting. We're so lucky. We have a really responsive council. We have a really responsive city employees, city managers, city attorney, who only have our best interest at heart. So it's been a great process, and I'm really grateful that I could participate in it.
Very good. So as a matter of process, the committee could vote to move this forward to the council this evening,
Yes.
correct? Okay. You guys ready to do that? Can I get a motion? Okay. Monique? Okay. Then moved and seconded that the Charter Review Committee's final proposed changes to the charter for the 2027 charter be presented to the council for consideration. All those in favor? Aye. 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 Yes, I get to vote. So I too want to say thank you to all the committee members for their time and their willingness to spend their personal time. And, this is kind of boring stuff sometimes unless you like constitutional government and research and study. But I appreciate you spending your personal evenings with us to make sure that this process has been fully vetted and brought to the community as a whole. And so I appreciate you guys willing to volunteer and sign up, and to Counselor or Rod Harden, past Counselor Harden, and Val Hoxie, please thank them as well for their participation. They were here at every meeting, if I remember right, other than tonight. So we had really good attendance at every meeting. So great process, and appreciate the mayor sitting in as well and representing the council. And to those of you for showing up this evening and participating in the conversation and hearing about the changes that we're recommending to the council. As far as next steps, this will get presented to the council at some point for further conversation and review, and the community can participate there as well.
Yeah, that's correct. And then, if they do choose to put something on the ballot, there'll be a lot of time to kind of hear about it. And I'm sure the council will want to make an effort to inform the community about the proposal and those kind of things. So there'll be other opportunities if that goes forward.
Are you looking at potentially a November election?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So lots of community participation still. So if those of you that maybe didn't get all your questions answered or your concerns addressed tonight, there'll be opportunities at city council meetings to participate, and ultimately you'll get to check that box one way or the other, whether you approve it or not. So it's going to come back to you for your approval in the end. So anything else, Mr. Smith?
The city attorney wants me to remind the council out there that probably shouldn't talk about this till it comes up on your agenda.
And no meetings in the foyer.
You don't want a
there
stereo
afterwards.
meeting.
I also want to say a special thank you to Lily. She made sure that we were fed every meeting. We do this during our dinner hour, and she made sure we had food every time. And so thank you, Lily. And thank you to City Manager Smith and City Attorney, Mr. Tuvey, for your participation and willingness to help educate us and dig into the weeds for us and bring us back some information when we had tough questions. So, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, so you guys all did your part. And one of the things that I wanted to say is that as mayor, I appreciate each and every one of you taking your time and reminding the public that every one of the members of this committee was a member of the public, not any council members. I threw a few things in, but it was just things from past processes, that part of it. They've made all the decisions on this. Every part of this was discussed by the public. And then it comes to the council. And so it's really nice to see that the public is the one making this decision. This is your charter. We uphold it, but it's your charter. And so, I am extremely proud of the work that was done, and I can't thank any of you all of you any enough. So. Ugh, vacation on the brain. But in any case, no, this has been a great process, and I'm really happy to see as many of the council members that are here to see what was taking place, because when it does come before us, most of our questions, they understand where the committee was coming from right from the get-go, instead of trying to, have one person explain, synopsisize.
Synthesize.
So
Yep.
I made
Something
that
like
word up.
that.
That's
yeah.
not a
So, Mr. Smith, do we need to be present for a presentation to the council, or are you going to present it to the council? How's that look moving forward? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Well, Lily, maybe if you could, right, recommend when it's on the agenda, and we could show it up and participate in the conversation if there's any questions too that the council may have, or give feedback during public comment section. All right, anything else, Mr. Smith? All right, we are adjourned.